most important thing in the world is just to show human beings that we're kind and we're caring and that we take care of one another and that the world is united.
This same man, now accused of an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. He's now been identified as 58-year-old Ryan Wesley Routh.
And I support human rights, and I support good and generosity and caring and kindness and altruism. And it's just, we need to show the world that we care.
Routh's apparent assassination attempt is the second in as many months on former President Donald Trump. And now, to make sense of everything we know so far, we're taking a deep dive into the history of Ryan Wesley Routh and what could be ahead. All this happened on Sunday, September 15th in West Palm Beach, Florida, at Trump International Golf Course, where former President Trump was hitting the links. This next bit of information is straight from the federal indictment. At approximately 1:31 p.m., a United States Secret Service special agent assigned to the former president's security detail was walking the perimeter of Trump International when the USSS agent saw what appeared to be a rifle poking out of the tree line. The next few events happened quickly. Some agents shielded Trump and brought him to safety, and it's important to note he wasn't injured. But at the same time, another agent fired their weapon as the suspect, now identified as Routh, ran off. During all this, Routh did not fire his weapon. Now, a nearby witness watched all of this and noted that Routh drove off in a black Nissan. This witness got a picture of the license plates and shared them with investigators. They later determined those plates were actually registered to a 2012 white Ford truck that had been reported stolen. But even still, investigators caught up with Routh about an hour later, 50 miles north of the golf course.
Driver! Take 2 steps to your right! Take 2 steps to your right! Come back. Driver! Walk straight back! Keep walking! Keep that long. Keep going down.
Former President Trump was not injured in the incident and released a statement reading in part, quote, "Fear not, I am safe and well, and no one was hurt, thank God. But there are people in this world who will do whatever it takes to stop us. I will not stop fighting for you. I will never surrender. I will always love you for supporting me. Through our unity, we will make America great again." Meanwhile, other investigators at the golf course rushed to the tree line where they found a digital camera, GoPro, multiple bags, and a loaded AK-style rifle apparently left behind by Routh. According to the affidavit, the serial number on the SKS-style rifle was obliterated and unreadable to the naked eye. As officials worked to confirm Routh's identity, they got emergency clearance from T-Mobile to take a closer look at his phone usage. It shows his phone was in the vicinity of the tree line from 1:59 a.m. until 1:31 p.m. on September 15th, so that leads us to believe he was hiding out there for about 12 hours. Pretty quickly, Routh's past came to light, revealing a lengthy criminal history. He has a 2022 conviction out of North Carolina for possession of a weapon of mass death and destruction. More charges out of North Carolina date back to 2010, when he was convicted of multiple counts of possession of stolen goods. Routh's issues with the law date back to the 1990s, when he was apparently writing bad checks. His criminal history also includes charges for hit and run, resisting arrest, and concealed weapons violations. In all, Routh had been charged more than 100 times in North Carolina. That past history led to his current federal charges of possession of a firearm by convicted felon and possession of a firearm with an obliterated serial number. Experts say more charges could be on the way, more on that later. Back to more of what we know so far about Routh. Now, most of his charges are out of North Carolina, where he spent most of his life. He attended North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University and graduated there in 1998. Routh later moved to Hawaii in 2018, and according to his LinkedIn, he owned a construction company there called Camp Box Honolulu. That brings us to Routh's political history, and this is kind of a winding road. According to his now suspended X, formerly Twitter, Routh voted for Trump in 2016. He wrote on the platform in June 2020, quote, "@RealDonaldTrump. "While you were my choice in 2106," he means 2016, "I and the world hoped that President Trump would be different and better than the candidate. But we all were greatly disappointed, and it seems you are getting worse and devolving. I will be glad when you gone." Routh took this stance to another level, though, in his self-published book that came out in 2023. It has a lengthy title: Ukraine's Unwinnable War, The Fatal Flaw of Democracy, World Abandonment, and the Global Citizen, Taiwan, Afghanistan, North Korea, and the End of Humanity. In the book, Routh voices support for Ukraine, but also called on the Iranian regime to assassinate Donald Trump and Russia's Vladimir Putin. Routh lays this all out over 291 pages, but he wasn't all talk. In 2022, he left Hawaii for Ukraine to fight for, quote, families and democracy, at least according to his Twitter. During his time in Ukraine, Routh was never hired by an armed forces unit, but he did visit there 6 times between 2022 and 2023. He also used his social media to call on politicians or celebrities to support Ukraine. He was interviewed by Newsweek Romania while he was in Ukraine, explaining why he felt his presence was needed.
You know, a lot of the other conflicts are gray, but this conflict is definitely black and white. This is about good versus evil. This is a storybook, you know, any movie we've ever watched, this is definitely evil against good. I mean, we're battling a situation here where, you know, the Ukrainians and the rest of the world are caring and kind and generous and unselfish and take care of one another. And it's just a matter of, you know, we need to stand up for that.
So we know Routh voted for Trump back in 2016, but more recently, he voted Democratic in the North Carolina primary election just this year. He's apparently registered as an unaffiliated voter, but has donated to Act Blue, which is a Democratic affiliated donation processor since 2019. That leads us to his charges of possession of a firearm by convicted felon and possession of a firearm with an obliterated serial number. The counts carry up to a combined 20 years behind bars, with a $250,000 fine and 3 years supervised release. There's a lot happening here with this constantly evolving story, so to really understand, I sat down with Frank Vigluzzi, author of Long Haul, Hunting the Highway Serial Killers, and the former assistant director for counterintelligence with the FBI. So Frank, I think the question that's going through everyone's mind when we hear news of a second attempted assassination, we're wondering, who is this guy? I mean, what are investigators doing to track down more information about him?
Yeah, I think we're asking at least 3 questions. Who, as you said, how does this keep happening? And why? Why is this happening? So with regard to the who, we're learning seemingly more every hour on this individual, including the fact that he's been arrested over 100 times just in the state of North Carolina, including crimes like possession of a weapon of mass destruction, which in this case was a fully automatic machine gun, and then resisting an officer, hit and run, and numerous other charges, some dismissed, some not. So this raises the question, why does he have an AK-47 in his hands? And that we're going to need to explore, because right now, at least, and it's early, it looks like he should not. And in fact, there's 2 charges he's being held on right now, which I consider kind of placeholder charges. One is filing the serial number off of the weapon, so which is a federal violation. The other is felon in possession of a weapon. So now we know he could not have legally possessed this gun. ATF, FBI, they'll be figuring out why, tracing the gun as far back as it goes. It's probably stolen, but we'll see. And then everybody's interested in motive, which isn't as important to investigators as you might think, but it helps when you're going to prosecute somebody. And right now, he's all over the map in terms of social media. You know, everybody today wants to try and slap a label. Is he left-wing? Is he right-wing? What I've seen so far, he's all over the place, and probably someone who's seeking some kind of infamy, attention, hence the GoPro camera, which appears poised to have recorded the whole thing. and maybe live on to tell about it because he had ceramic plates in his backpack, which might have offered him protection against high-powered weapons fired at him. And he fled the scene. So someone probably wanted some kind of major global attention.
There are so many directions we can go with this interview because we have so many questions. But what I'll start with is his background. Because, as you said, a lot of people are wondering what the motive is, what could have led up to this. And he had a self published book that has kind of interesting views in it. He even references hoping that Iran would assassinate Trump. Are these things that investigators are going to be taking a look at? The book, the social media, if he has any journals or diaries, things like that?
Anything that gives them more insights into how long he's been planning and researching this and why he might have done it will, of course, help. Because unlike the Butler, Pennsylvania rally attempt on Donald Trump's life, that subject is deceased. There will be no trial, no prosecution. Here, this is going to be prosecuted federally. And as much ammo, no pun intended, as the federal prosecutors can get, particularly this goes to a jury, the jury's going to want to hear this. They're going to want to know why. Why would he do this? It helps. It's not necessary, but it helps.
Talking about those charges, you said they're almost like placeholder charges. And I can understand wanting to charge this guy right away after such a serious alleged offense. But what are you thinking with the term placeholder, that they may add additional charges? And if so, what could they be?
Right. This is something that allows you to hold. And by the way, I don't want to denigrate felon in possession. Felon in possession of a weapon is a big deal, as is altering a gun by removing the serial number. Don't want to denigrate that. There's some serious prison time there. But when I say placeholder, I'm certain that FBI agents are looking for more, just like a charge perhaps of attempted assassination of a federal official or protectee. And by the way, though that federal official could also be assault on a federal agent. Remember, those two Secret Service agents that ran toward this rifle absolutely had the right to defend themselves. They were, I'm told, only 100 yards or so away, 100 feet or so away from this guy. They absolutely may have opened fire not only to protect Trump, but to protect themselves. And that could be a separate charge on this guy.
There's an additional charge I'm thinking about too, and it could be on someone else. We touched on this briefly before, but based on his criminal history, he's a felon. He shouldn't have had access to this weapon. He shouldn't have been sold it legally, illegally, obviously. So are investigators also going to work to track down whoever may have given him access to this weapon?
This has now become a very common objective. ATF particularly adept at tracing the weapon back, discovering it tells a story, that weapon. And sadly, in our society, there's a lot of bad stories about stolen weapons and where they end up. So yes, they'll be first trying to attempt where it was originally sold. Now, this gets interesting because of the filing off of the serial number, but the laboratory, the law enforcement labs can indeed, through acid etching, try to restore that serial number, so that then they do have an ID for the weapon that can more easily be traced to its original gun sale with hopefully a valid dealer somewhere, and then see if it's been reported. The key is getting that serial number back.
How are investigators going to really dig in so that they can ensure getting those charges of potential attempted assassination or any of the harm that they may have caused to those Secret Service agents?
Yeah, we're speaking of digging in here, we see images on television of the FBI Miami evidence response team, a very experienced, adept evidence response team. Miami's the 5th largest FBI office in the country. I was assigned to the number 2 position there during my FBI career. I can tell you that the history of FBI Miami's ERT includes that they were the team that went into an anthrax-filled 3-story building in Boca Raton, Florida, the headquarters of AMI, that tabloid newspaper. And you may recall that was the first anthrax murder in the history of the United States, October 2001. I was there. That team is outstanding. They can operate in hazmat conditions like no one else. And this is easy for them. A golf course, easy.
So let's talk about that because you have experience right in this area geographically, but also your history and your career. When Secret Service agents are there on the golf course and they notice something is amiss, what are they doing? What are the first moments and reactions?
So there'll be a lot of scrutiny given to the fact that this guy reportedly, well, again, this is some of the info we're getting hourly now, was in place on that course for 12 hours, 2 a.m. Sunday to approximately 2 p.m. in the shooting. The question is obvious. Why wouldn't the security detail have combed through the shrubs ahead of time? Now, I think we're going to hear, look, a golf outing is a simple thing that Donald Trump does almost all the time. He's been at this course, I'll bet you, over his lifetime, 100 times or more. They know it backwards and forwards. It's not an outdoor rally, it's golf with private membership. So I think the guard comes down. They don't enhance the detail. They may not have put drones up for a routine golf outing. And there you have it. The first question, why did they have to wait for a rifle to point out of the woods? Now, good news, they responded exceptionally well. Agents running toward a rifle that's pointed outward at them, near them, that's bravery. Firing rounds at someone that's an imminent threat to you or your protectee, absolutely correct. He was likely on the move. I know I would be if I was being shot at. So, hitting a moving target, not easy, not like the movies. He gets into his car. Thank God a witness catches the car, photographs the license plate. Technology takes over. It gets put in the license plate reader system on the toll plazas on 95, and bingo, there he is in Martin County, Florida. So I'm hesitant right now to call this a Secret Service failure. I think we need to learn more. I was very quick for Butler, Pennsylvania, to call that a colossal series of failures. I'm not sure this is a failure. I think this is a reflection of where we are in society with the pervasiveness of assault-style rifles, the mental health crisis we're facing in our society, and the fact that now protecting someone outside is becoming virtually impossible.
Going back to the original attempted assassination back in July, that's when I first spoke to you, and we were digging into everything we knew then. And now, about 2 months later, we're talking about it again, but a completely different circumstance. I mean, to me, this really jumps out. The first one was crazy. Now we have a second one. I mean, how is it possible that these two things have happened so close to each other and no changes have been made?
Well, we don't quite know the changes that have been made. We can study the testimony of acting Secret Service Director Ron Routh. You'll recall that the director herself resigned after a kind of abysmal testimony on Capitol Hill. So here comes the veteran deputy director as the assistant director, as the acting director, Ron Routh. He testifies on the Hill right after Butler. And he says, we are now going to be using extensively aerial resources, and he refers to them as drones. And he says we're going to be doing that now moving forward at outdoor events and rallies. So I'll bet you we're going to hear that either there was only one drone up or there were no drones up because this wasn't a rally. This was a weekend golf outing. Clearly, that's a miscalculation. And they're going to have to do any event outside with aerial surveillance and a lot more resources. My sources are telling me that we're looking at as many as 1,500 agents from Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, under the Department of Homeland Security, where Secret Service sits also, by the way, being detailed to the Secret Service. 1,500 agents. Now that raises the question, what will those Homeland Security agents not be working in their regular jobs because the Secret Service needs a lot of help?
Well, I mean, what's difficult about this is we've got an election year. So we have these politicians on both sides of the aisle kind of crisscrossing across America, traveling nonstop. I mean, I know that you said that there will be additional agents there, which will be good, but how will they make sure that nothing like this happens again?
Yeah, they've got to get it right for about 50 more days, don't they? And here's the thing. While I'm tempted to say, look, we got to call timeout on outdoor events right now with these candidates. I also realize that we got 50 days to an election. Actually, early voting has already started in some states. So you don't want the security threat to actually shape an election outcome, right? So I'm sure Secret Service would like to say timeout, please, for a week with regard to outdoor events while we get our act together with more drones and more resources and train the HSI agents and blah, blah, blah. But you do that and you may take candidates down for that week and impact the campaigning. How easily can they convert to indoor space? Can they do it? Can they scramble? I have to tell you, the security guy in me says they should be doing that. But I understand we also don't want the bad guys to win here. So what they've got to do is put the drones up now for anything outside. They've got to do serious advance work with regard to this. They clearly should have caught this guy for lying in wait for 12 hours in the shrubs. They got to do it. And I think there's major changes needed culturally at the Secret Service. It's a very insular agency. They don't like to talk about anything. They take their first name very seriously, secret. But it's time for much more transparency. People say, well, give them whatever they need. I'll tell you this, the budget of the Secret Service has increased something like 55% in the last decade. So they're not lacking for money. It's time to start talking about our society and the fact that we have 20 million AR-15s in America. We have 31 states that permit open carry. And look, I'm not here. This show isn't about, I'm pro Second Amendment. No, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is imagine yourself the Secret Service, and imagine you've got a country with 20 million AR-15s, which is similar but different than the AK-47. And you've got 31 states that allow people to walk around with them. Okay, tough challenge.
Circling back now to the suspect in this case, obviously we're still super early on, but I know that the public is going to want to know more, so will investigators, federal prosecutors too. Do you have any idea of what the timeline could look like ahead or when more information would come out?
We're going to, because this is a pending investigation and eventually a prosecution, there's going to be limited information. However, the court process can actually be our friend here. By that, I mean that he's going to have arraignment. He's going to have to enter a plea. He's going to have pretrial motions. He's going to show up in court. Now, federal court closed to cameras, but not to reporters. And more importantly, the documents should be largely unsealed. So as the prosecutor begins to kind of show his cards to the other side and to the judge, we will get a peek at what they're developing. Enough to convince a judge, of course, that, hey, we can hold this guy and we can charge him.
We're still in the early stages of the investigation, so more updates will develop in the coming days, and we'll make sure to bring you the latest. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Gillespie.